Okay, we should be live. All right. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Welcome in Don Spain, She Warrior, Phil Bond, and anybody else that is here that might just be kind of lurking or just busy listening. Going to dive into Abby and Libby's case today, also known as the Delphi murders. This is the Sleuth Intuition channel, and I'm your host, Patrick Vallejos. So if you haven't noticed the title, Richard and 4chan, we're going to take another look. Some of you may not even know what 4chan is. We'll give you a little refresher. I'll explain how looking into the whole Richard and 4chan angle, it led me to a creepy YouTuber named Bobby Camworth. Some of you may be familiar with that. Some of you maybe not. So that was interesting. And then we're also going to talk about the lethality of the box cutter. Right? Maybe not the choice weapon for defense or for, it's not going to be your choice to go into battle. Oh, you got an AR-15. Well, I'm going to go into battle with the box cutter. Or, oh, you have a bayonet and a big ass knife or a sword. I'm going to use a box cutter. Nobody's going to make that choice, right? But a deranged assassin, for sure. That's a perfect choice. Easy to conceal. You can't really even see the blade. And if you're going to target certain areas like the carotid artery, it's perfect, especially against a vulnerable target. So we're going to talk about that. But first, let's look at this. Inquisitive, what's up? Thank you guys for the feedback and the input. Joe Moser, good to see you. Brian Solera. Looks like they went back to showing the YouTube handle, not the name that's selected. Peggy, what's up? What's up, Timmy? Let's do it. Frank Meister, what's up? Who'd I miss? Says here your name is Miss Candy, but I think that's Miss Kitty, right? All right, so what the hell is 4chan? So 4chan is a place that I used to dive into early on in the case, right? This is how I found Julian Powell. So two of the main places that I was hanging out early on in the case, I never really fucked with Reddit. But was probably Facebook, a lot of Facebook groups, and 4chan. Only because I knew that 4chan, these were a dedicated bunch of ADHD basement dwellers. I mean, these guys were dedicated. And even if that wasn't their true lifestyle, that's who they were deep down. So they were motivated to get to the bottom of something, and they understand what it meant to work collectively as a cohesive unit. So they would work together as a cohesive unit to try to find an answer. And they were extremely persistent. So knowing that, I definitely was attracted to 4chan while I was looking for information on what might have happened to Abby and Libby. And then that's where I found Julian Powell, who is really still a name that kind of fits into a certain degree, right? The mental health aspect of what we now know with Richard Allen. And that's why we're going back to the 4chan stuff. So much information is being released on this case that if we don't go back and look at the older stuff, which may have seemed irrelevant at the time, now it might make sense, right? Might ring some bells. Little phrases here and there. YouTube handle, street name. 4chan peaked right around the time of this case. Never used it, but always say screenshots from there. Yeah, I knew what 4chan was. I knew it was mainly, it was more of a political channel. But it's basically the original X. I don't know if you've noticed on X where people kind of get exposed for their bad behavior or racism or whatever. And then X, the people that are on X take it upon themselves to kind of, I guess, expose these people. And they try to do it on a grand scale. That's the same thing that 4chan was doing. Basically what X is doing now. Working as a cohesive unit for one goal, which would be to expose somebody. And in this case, it just happened to be they took an interest in the Delphi case. So that definitely caught my attention. I was interested to see where that went. So I would follow it. Because it was always interesting. Well, what is 4chan? Well, this is, according to them, 4chan is a simple image-based bulletin board where anyone can post comments and share images. There are boards dedicated to a variety of topics, from Japanese animation and culture to video games, music, and photography. Users do not need to register an account before participating in the community, right? Predators probably love that. Feel free to click on a board below that interests you and jump right in. And really, the majority of this shit is just smut. It's smut, it's racism, a lot of hackers, a lot of memes, a lot of anger, a lot of hatred. But then there's random stuff like the Delphi discussion as well. And somebody might feel comfortable coming on to 4chan thinking it's some kind of clandestine site or some kind of back channel, which it really was. A lot of people didn't know about it, still don't. But somebody might have felt comfortable enough to come back there and start leaving information or participating in a conversation about the Delphi murders if they had inside knowledge, right? Or maybe even the killer. What's up, Ziggy? Yeah, Peggy, it's like a generic Twitter with less functionality and automation. Okay, so here are some of the archived comments that I've collected over the years. And I think you can still recover these on 4plebs, which is an archive for 4chan. So what I want you to focus in on would be the date. Looks like this conversation took place around February 23rd, 2020. 6:58 to be exact. Okay, so I want us to read all this with everything that we know about Richard Allen, his mental health, his timeline, what we know about Kagan Klein, his possible involvement. Also, the McCains, right? Their possible involvement, hypothetically. Remember, this is just my opinion. This is just for investigative and educational purposes only. So I just want you guys to keep in all of these possible scenarios and conspiracies and what we all think might have happened and what we all feel in our gut possibly happened. And think about this when somebody's mentioning the name Richard, the Delphi murders, being on the bridge, and all these strange things. Almost 3 years, 2.5 years before Richard was ever mentioned publicly or even arrested, right? All right, so let's begin. What you all fail to interpret about small town civics is the manner in which fall into each other in a public square. One cannot find happiness or fortitude with a simple game and keep their daughters safe from such predators. This man will get away with everything. I didn't want to come out and say it, but I lived in Delphi for years, and without a doubt, Richard is not well known in the town. I have been monitoring the thread. See, just like I was, right? I'm monitoring this thread, trying to find information, and I probably read this at the time and was like, you know, because there was a sex offender by the name of Richard in the local area that had been released around the time. He broke his probation and they sent him back. He didn't register as a sex offender. His name was Richard. So I think back then when I read this, I just assumed it was him. And I was like, oh, this is just somebody with their own theory trying to leave strange comments, trying to tie in that Richard. So I had no clue. But just like this person says, I have been monitoring the thread. That's what I was doing. Let's continue. City dwellers do not understand how such a place works, or local police kinship without community dealings unto in self and more. Please do not ask me why the simple man rules outward. So, what could this mean? So, when I think of small town civics, I think of the McCain brothers. I think of Nick McClelland. I think of the sheriff. I think of some of those foundations, those nonprofits, in the manner in which fall into each other in a public square. Right? You may not realize somebody has power until you want to try to start a business or purchase property, right? And then all of a sudden you start to realize who's pulling the strings in that small town. You got to jump through hoops. Its own ecosystem. Okay, so we have somebody here talking about small town civics. This person will never ever be caught. We have Richard Allen basically being protected, it seems, right? The lost tip. Um, Jerry Holman knowing about Richard Allen, Dan Doolin knowing about Richard Allen, all of these people knowing about Richard Allen, but nobody's interested in serving a search warrant. You got Robert Ives, who's leaving. He's abandoning the two largest cases of his entire career, which would be Flora and the Delphi murders. Why would he do that? This is his time to shine. And he's the guy that said he thought the case would be solved in 4 days. Well, probably because the guy who was responsible, came forward within 3 days. So yeah, he's like, I thought this would be solved right away until the conspiracy begun, and I had to step back. Right, I ain't getting involved in that. Same reason that Diener probably recused himself. So, and what does this mean? One cannot find happiness or fortitude with a simple game and keep their daughters safe. What's the simple game? Is that just living like a normal person? Can you not do that? And keep their daughters safe from such predators. This man will get away with everything. I mean, that's very interesting that they're saying that when Rick Allen was protected, it seems, right? The lost tip. Kagan Klein, no arrest, no follow up interview. Even after the new direction presser and Rick put a gun in his mouth, nothing. This was shortly after that, less than a year. Okay, so then somebody responds shortly after that. Like, tell us more about Richard. Like, who's that? Like, who you're referring to with your cryptic comments? right? And this is a oops, I let the cat out the bag moment. No, I meant to say richly. There isn't any Richard. He had nothing to do with it, right? What do you mean there's no Richard? If there's no Richard, then there's no he to do anything with. So, right, you can see right there, they're trying to be a smartass. There isn't any Richard. He had nothing to do with it. Let's not pretend the police aren't aware. How many times did we suspect that they knew who Richard Allen was? Once again, the date, Sunday, February 23rd, 2020. Talking about Richard. Let's not pretend the police aren't aware. Fully aware. But why'd they lie and say they lost the tip? Like, what the fuck is going on with this case? There's some kind of darkness behind this case that has, at one point, had the entire world looking at Delphi, and still a lot of us, right? The intuitive group that's left behind who says, nope, I'm not satisfied yet. I'm not satisfied with the answers that are being provided. Doesn't mean we have to bite on every conspiracy theory. We can go down rabbit holes and come back out and bring some things with us, right? We can retrieve items that were down there and bring them back to the surface and say, hey, these are significant. Just because they're down at the bottom of this rabbit hole doesn't mean that they're not meaningful. It just means that the rabbit hole itself is no good. It's going in the wrong direction. It's not connected to the right network. Corn Pop, what up? Grunge, good to see you. When Richard told the authorities he was there, yep, some authorities probably check suspects off one at a time. I mean, think about it. They served the Maxwell search warrant with really hardly any probable cause whatsoever. It just doesn't make sense that they wouldn't serve Dave McCain and Richard Allen search warrants. It doesn't make any sense. Unless you think about small town civics, right? Like what this person is referring to. What you all fail to interpret about small town civics is the manner in which fall into each other in a public square. Some cryptic shit. Okay, somebody responding here. I'd honestly not be surprised if people were covering it up. So this is somebody kind of continuing on with the conversation. Surprised if people were covering it up. Indiana seems like one of the more fucked up flyover states. Indiana does get a bad rap. Maybe some of you there can speak on that. They respond, there isn't any Richard. He had nothing to do with it. Like this isn't adding up. Please tell me more. How haven't they found this guy yet? Irk. They had a fairly incriminating photo, more than you would get from most killers, right? Libby's bridge guy video. And the town isn't big. I agree with that. Check this out. Everyone in town knows who it is, but we don't report him because he keeps time into specifics. Would you tell your dad if you found a mistaken photo of a juvenile? What does that even mean? Everyone in town knows who it is, but we don't report him because he keeps time into specifics. Would you tell your dad if you found a mistaken photo of a juvenile? No. The fuck does that mean? So we're going to try to decode all this a little bit later. And that's what kind of led me to Bobby Camworth, the creepy YouTube channel. So we're going to kind of look back and try to decode all these cryptic messages like keeps time into specifics. If your dad found a mistaken photo of a juvenile, like, what does that even mean? And this is also interesting. He had no social media presence. Dude is a ghost. Remember Richard Allen at the beginning of his interview with Mullins and Leggett? He said, "Do you have any social media?" He's like, "No, but my wife does." So, just like us, everybody became curious about what they meant by that cryptic comment. What did he mean by this? Because he keeps time into specifics, right? We have Kagan Klein apparently using a phone as his alibi. Rick Allen with his timelines, very specific when he gave it to Dan Doolin. He's like, I was here from here to here, and then I went home, this and that. Wife came home, Rick was there. Everything's accounted for. So they respond, he's father time. If he gets locked up, we'll all start moving back in time. What could that possibly mean? He's father time. If he gets locked up, we'll all start moving back in time. Does that mean that we'll be brought back to 2017? Or does that mean we're going to be brought back to other horrible crimes? You know, these tentacles. And then again, we can't even really listen to anything from Doug Carter. He wasn't even part of the investigation. He's just an actor, right? He's the politician. He's the good looking, outspoken. I think he even might have majored in theater in college or has a background in it. So, what do you guys think all this means so far? If Richard never told anybody he was on the bridge, would he have ever been arrested? Yes. You want to know why, Grunge? This is why Richard Allen would have been arrested. Because his wife knew that he was on the trails. His wife is the one that pressured him. So if he says, no, I'm not going to police, that's going to draw red flags and might even cause her to tip him in or say something. Like, I can't believe he did it. She might have even have been suspicious, you know? But if I'm suspicious of my wife that she might have participated in something, even though I doubt it, but it just all lines up, and then she goes and speaks with police and they clear her, I'm no longer suspicious. There's nothing you can ever say to me, even convicting him and all of that. There's nothing you can say to me after that that could fight against my deniability or my urge for deniability to deny that. You know, sometimes the subconscious seems to protect us from those types of truths. That's a, that to accept that for Kathy basically takes away her entire life. She's been with Rick since the very beginning, right? Since they graduated like a year out of high school. He went to college for a little bit and then joined the military. They got married. What's up, Jar? I don't know, Grunge. I think Ron Logan is still a viable suspect. He might have played a part in this, right? We have him cleaning up his yard. Fig, remember he released that video that he got his hands on of him throwing away all this debris. It's almost as if he was expecting guests, like he was going to have company. Not to mention he had money to spend. And it's very curious timing that right as the kidnappers are getting ready to launch this plan, right? This kidnapping plot, you have him leaving. He's leaving the area. He's cleaned up his yard. He's got money in his hand, and he's going to go buy $100 worth of fish. He's not going to be home, and he's going to be gone, and he's going to be spending money. Grunge says, I really thought it was Kurtz because of the spitting. What spitting? Oh, on the bridge, yeah. The spitting on the bridge. I think that might have been a cigarette being spit out. But yeah, he's definitely spitting something. You're right about that, Grunge. I agree with you. Amorican, so creepy. Yeah, this shit is creepy. He's father time. He gets locked up. We'll all start moving back in time. Well, here it's 2020. Does that mean they're going to be moving back to 2017 when the truth comes out? Could that explain why Robert Ives is leaving? Why people like Dave McCain are involved? Now, remember, Dave McCain and Nick McClelland, they have history together. The McClelland family is embedded with the McCains. So you have Ives step back, and then you have Nick step in to kind of sheepdog this whole thing. And just for precautions, they'll bring in Brad and Andy. Right? Let's bring in Brad and Andy so that we can control the defense side. And we'll just make sure this thing ends up where we want it. Exactly where it is right now. Last thing they want is people like me continuing to dig. But I'm telling you right now, if you guys stop digging, this is going to happen again. Could happen again in Delphi. This is difficult to cipher so far. Well, we're going to use, I use Chat GPT. I asked it to decipher these messages, but I did not include the name Richard. I said, here, just decipher it and exclude the name Richard, and then try to decode these messages with the knowledge of Richard being present. And that's what actually led me to the Bobby Camworth YouTube channel. So I can't wait to get your opinion on that. So like I said, we're going to go back and try to decode all this shit. Grunge says, you're right. If she never told. Jari, I used to roll my eyes back when people would say, I can't wait for Doug Carter to tell us everything. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't know shit. And then he retired without saying a damn word. And you can just see the look on his face like, man, I don't want nothing to do with this case at all. I know that my guys are up to some shady shit. The good news is I'm going to be retired and I don't got to deal with it because I'm not part of this investigation. But he knows exactly what's happening. And he probably understands. From his perspective, he gets why they're doing what they're doing. Imagine actually getting a drop of blood out of a turnip and then saying, oh, well, we can't use this. And another thing, lack of evidence, a lack of DNA evidence, right? If you use like a large weapon or something that you can't really grip with the large blade, the chances of you cutting your own hand are higher. So that's another reason there wasn't a lot of DNA left or any DNA left by the killer. No chance for sexual assault. And the type of weapon that he eventually used is something that you can really get a good grip on. And it has a really small blade on it. So once again, that's effective for not leaving DNA. Look what happens with most knife attacks, right? It's very brutal, very violent, very physical. And the hand almost every time it slips, especially with kitchen knives, pocket knives, things like that. I mean, the Devil's Den. How many times have we seen this where the blade, that's the one thing they look at when they're interrogating a suspect. All right, sir, ma'am, we're interrogating you because we think you might be involved in this knife attack. Let me see your hands. And then the suspect shows them your hands and they're bandaged up or they're all cut up on the knuckles and between the fingers and the palms and things like that almost every time. But if you're going to use a box cutter, you got a good grip on it and you're just kind of digging into a very specific area, it's not a preferred defense weapon. It's definitely not something you would take into combat. But if you're some kind of nutcase assassin and you're using it to kind of conceal the weapon so your victim doesn't see it coming, and also there's a less chance that you're going to cut your own hand. She used to have a YouTube channel, but I forgot the name. Morgan. The only thing is with Ron Logan, what he said in jail, in his sleep or whatever, seems so specific. No, we're going to talk about that. So the letter from Reese Davis was from 2017. I want to say maybe June. He says that Ron Logan mentioned a box cutter. I mean, you can't ignore that. How did he know that? Either he knows the people that did it, was involved, and he knows that a box cutter was used. Because it's almost impossible for Ron Logan to be involved physically. Right? There's no way that his phone's going to be pinging, leaving the area at 209, which is kind of pinged near, like it was getting on the freeway. So pinged over there by the CPS building, the highway area. And then the amount of time it would have taken him to get to Lafayette, spend an hour there, and drive back, he's just no way he's the bridge guy. Could he be the knife guy? Possibly. But as far as him being on that bridge, it's not him. Hey, true crime fan. What's up? Yeah, if it's even true, Morgan. But it's interesting. But you have Reese who's saying, well, Ron Logan mentioned a box cutter. That matches, right? Dr. Kors says, yes, that matches. It's a eureka moment. It's an epiphany. Whoa, there it is, right? He takes back the serrated comment. Well, I never thought it was serrated. He says it was serrated-esque, serrated-like, not that it was serrated. So I find that interesting in some of the tests that I did personally, and I'll show that to you guys later on in the stream. But yeah, but Reese Davis mentions Ron Logan, but then again, he comes back later and mentions Kagan Klein and Ron Logan together. So if somebody like the McCains are involved, they would have influence over Ron Logan, right? That could be a whole group of people who are in on this. McCains, Logan, Richard Allen, and the Kleins. McCains bring in Logan because they need that land, they need that property, and they know that they can manipulate him with money and his criminal record. He feels confident, right? Hypothetically. McCain's also enlists somebody like Richard Allen. Richard Allen is the one responsible for the Klein part of all of this and getting Abby and Libby to that specific location at a specific time, most likely for ritualistic reasons. Everybody's like, they want to eat up the Odinism thing, right? I don't say we throw it out completely. Why, you never want to do that. But people are feeling it in their gut that there's something ritualistic going on here, right? 2 13-year-olds on 213, abducted at 213, and apparently possibly murdered exactly at 230-ish, right around Lupercalia, things like that. Like there's something ritualistic. There's a ritualistic motivation going on, as above, something going on maybe with the moon, the stars, something very specific for the person behind the motivation on this murder. And I don't know if it's Richard Allen himself or somebody that recruited him. What's up, Fishy? What up? Thank you, Jari. There's verified killers, dead bodies, murder solved on 4chan. It's a cesspool. Yep. Jody, what's up? How did the ME not think a box cutter until trial? Didn't he think it was possible? Two knives? No, that's not what he said. And we're going to get into that. We're going to read his testimony. We're also going to listen to an interview he gave on a radio station. So remember, we want to go to the source, right, Fishy? We don't want to rely on all these creepy Richard Allen supporters for our information, right? We want to go to the source. Well, of course, if it goes against your narrative, but you definitely want them to be honest, right? And we're going to hear it from him. We're not going to hear it from some sleazy YouTuber that's completely biased. So we're going to listen to the doctor himself, and then we're going to make up our mind. But we're not ready for that yet. We'll get into that here in a little bit. All right. We've caught up on the chat. So Sunday, the 23rd of February, year is 2020. Check this out. Just because there was a video of Richard on the train tracks doesn't mean he did it. Isn't that crazy? Fishy says, no, I'm totally fine about being wrong. I'm wrong. No, this isn't about being wrong. It's not about being wrong. We're all wrong. Right? We don't have the answers. We're just searching for truth. We're not trying to be the one that's right or wrong, right? That has nothing to do with it. We're not dealing with that at all. What we're dealing with is the search for the truth, which needs sources, factually based information, not stuff that's coming out of a cesspool, right? So it's not about being right or wrong. It's just about regurgitating information that's not even coming from the doctor himself, right? It's like, imagine taking what Dr. Kaur said and running it through a machine, a muck up machine. So take what he says and run it through some kind of bias muck up machine. And the information that people are spreading is what comes out of that machine, which is basically a dog turd, just a remnants of the truth. That's why we preach that. Go to the source. Go to the source of the information. I'm not going to sit here and try to make up what Dr. Kaur said and spread it around in a chat. We're going to go right to what he said, and I have it all lined up. I have all his testimony. I have his interview with Hammer and Nigel. And then we're going to look at it for ourselves. But what we're definitely not going to do is spew misinformation. At least I'm not. Right? And it's not my information. So I don't have to worry about being right or wrong. That's the good thing about presenting factual information that you can back up with receipts and go directly to the source, is you don't have to worry about being right or wrong. All you're doing is presenting the facts. Let's see. Just because there was a video of Richard on the train tracks doesn't mean he did it. The cops are smart enough to know this and probably interrogated him already. We might have already interviewed you. Well, the fact is they did already. Probably interrogated him already. That was a fact. It was a dead end. No, there was no follow-up. Right? No, wasn't a dead end. Either that or he has connections. Who could his possible connections be? Who has that kind of pull in that area? That's why we bring up the McCains, right? Investigations 101. Who stands to gain from this crime? Those guys did. Possibly even Ron Logan. Possibly even the Kleins and Rick. Depends on what we uncover. Probably someone from out of town. Who knows, though? First for Richard. Yep, just theories. Because we can all sense it, right, Grunge? We can all sense that there's an evil behind this case. There's an evil, there's a cover up, and we're all anxious to jump on that, right? So they dangle out the Odinism like, there you go, guys. See, there's the ritualistic stuff that you are all hoping for. There it is. Right? And if you're too emotional, you're going to bite on that. You're going to fall right off the cliff, a cliff that you can't come back from without climbing all the way back up to the top. But we all deep down, us who trust our intuition, can sense it, who are listening, right? Listening to the heavens. What are you trying to tell us? There's something not right. Something is not right. Web of Deceit Untangled. Isn't it insane that the people who support Richard Allen don't believe his words when his words don't support their narrative? I just don't understand where it comes from. Like, I get all of the psychological abuse and torture that happens in jail cells and in prisons, but I don't hear anybody advocating for that as a whole. It's only for Richard Allen. Like, he's the only one that was ever tortured. It's not the system that's torturing people with solitary confinement and things like that. It's just Rick. It's just Rick Allen. And the only reason they care about Rick being tortured in prison is because that's what helps their narrative. If they were consistent, they would want a complete overhaul of the whole system, right? A third option for people like Rick Allen, who are innocent until proven guilty, but have a shit ton of evidence against them. They need him protected. They need him under observation. They don't need other prisoners watching him, right? While he's potentially suffering from psychosis. But it's not just happening to Richard Allen. It's happening all across the country in all of the prisons in every state. And the people who are advocating for Rick Allen don't advocate for that at all, because they only specifically advocate for things that protect their narrative. And that's confirmation bias on full display. Let's see. Talking about a crime and going through the different theories is what creates the facts. Yeah, you speculate behind the scenes, right? And most law enforcement, they can never come public with their speculation. But then they investigate it and they try to prove themselves wrong, right? I need to go prove myself wrong. And if they find something along the way that they just can't ignore, there it is, right? The truth that you've been looking for. Can't ignore it. You don't try to bend it, right? And try to misrepresent what people say or interpret them with a filter. Web of deceit, cognitive bias are pretty wild. And I believe that goes across the board. That's why I like people with different opinions. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so here. I appreciate that, Jari. Hit the Cash App. If you can't hit the Cash App, hit the like button. Got a tiny rock in the back of my shoe, and I'm not stopping to get it out. Just move it around. Wiggle it around. Hurts after a while. Yeah, sucks if you're wearing boots. Richard Allen is a special little man, I guess. I guess so. They really, and it's not even anything about Richard Allen. They don't care about Richard Allen. But they know something's not right in Denmark. Something doesn't smell right. And we all get it. But we're not going to jump on the first piece of cheese, right? We're not going to nibble at the rat trap like these rats do. We see the trap that's being set, and we're going to investigate who set these traps. Who is responsible for this, right? We're playing chess. We're not playing checkers here. And we're not getting tired either, right? Oh, I'm so tired. I just don't want to talk about this case anymore. I give up. It was the Odins. What's up, the Red Queen? Okay, so this comment says, first for Richard. All right, let's see. First for Richard, maybe, just maybe, these threads don't need an eternal general. Probably meant an attorney general. Where the same shit gets talked over and over for eternity. So somebody's upset about what's being said. Was there never any proof that Richard did it just because they took a video of him? See, this person almost seems drunk. There was never any proof that Richard did it just because they took a video of him. Seriously though, just because he is mentally handicapped doesn't mean he is capable of brutal murder. All right, mentally handicapped. We now know Richard Allen, has some issues, was even hospitalized. Is that what they mean by this? Morgan, damn, I'm playing Connect 4. A really strange case for me is the David guy. Yep. And he's publicly named a suspect, which is, he's always been a suspect, right? That's one thing we've learned about law enforcement and homicide investigators. Sometimes they have the guy right from the beginning and the public won't know. And according to these 4chan comments, that's what they're telling us happened with Richard Allen. Okay. See, now they're getting mad. Who the fuck is Richard? See, somebody knows who Richard was. Somebody knew Richard Allen was on the bridge. Somebody knew that they had a video of him. They also decided to leave a bunch of cryptic comments. Richard definitely did it, you retard. Just because he's mentally disabled means nothing. Why else was he hanging out there? Right? Nobody knew Richard Allen was out there. We had a list and we could name almost everybody. Why else was he hanging out there? The cops know he didn't, but have not been able to build enough evidence on him. And then they go and correct it, meant to say did it. So right here, they meant to say the cops know he did it. So whoever's leaving these comments in 2022 knew that Richard Allen was responsible, partly for the crime, and that he had connections that would help him cover it up and that they would never find him. The real red pill about Richard is that he comes from a very wealthy, influential family. That I don't believe is a true statement. But I don't know. Could he? That's why the cops won't charge him and have to keep pretending they don't know who did it. They won't even admit that they know who the guy in the video is. So whoever's writing this says law enforcement knows it's Richard Allen, and maybe the protection that they're referring to is not his influential family, somebody else that is influential that's involved in the crime, protecting Rick. Not only protecting Rick, but protecting Dave and protecting Kagan, and almost seemingly trying to pin it on Ron Logan. Right? Like, shit, we'll just pin it on Ron. Who cares what he says? It didn't work. At least the FBI thought he was involved. And I'm coming to find out that well, no, that would have happened after. No, I have to verify that. I might have my times mixed up on that one. The David guy put real life into his music. Yeah, that's what these killers do. It's part of this weird fantasy that they live in. That's what's causing them to commit these murders. Richard had something symbolic involved in his murders. Yeah, something going on with two 13-year-olds at, kidnapping at 2:13 and committing a murder around 2:30. There's something very specific about that. Peggy says something is very wrong. This person said, Richard didn't get rid of the bodies. Why would you? The guy in the picture is Richard. I mean, how much clearer do these people have to be? The guy in the picture is Richard. A local. Richard is a local who was near the scene but not the killer, most likely. Hmm. Okay, so let's bring this up. I guess I can close the 4chan stuff down. All right, let's try to decipher some of these coded messages. So I ran them through, it might have been Chat GPT or maybe even Grok. I'm not sure. Let's see. They said, these comments definitely read like cryptically poetic speculation rather than concrete information. Let's break them down one by one and try to decipher what the post might be implying. So we're going to look at it without the fact that the suspect, Richard Allen's name, was mentioned, right? This is just like a blind evaluation from the AI. Prison labor. So then are we theorizing that in the depositions they were lying and that they knew who Richard Allen was because of the 4chan post? I'm not sure what you're referring to, Fishy. You have two items overlapping. The 4chan and the knife and the box cutter stuff have nothing to do with each other, so I'm not sure what you mean. I wonder if any of these people contacted the authorities. I'm not sure. And listen to the end. You don't have to STFU. Speak your mind. But that goes both ways, you know? Okay, so AI says these comments definitely read like cryptically poetic speculation rather than concrete information. So, number one, everyone in the town knows who it is, but we don't report him. So, these are some of the parts that stuck out to the AI system. Everyone in town knows who it is, but we don't report him. This is a common type of 4chan phrasing that implies local complicity or the idea that the suspect is known but protected. It's likely meant to create intrigue rather than reflect verified fact. Right? Could be. But what are the odds that they're saying Richard was on the bridge. Richard is in the photo. What's up, CJK? Because he keeps time into specifics. What could that mean? This is metaphorical. Keeps time. Could mean somebody is very punctual or methodical. The into specifics part might imply the person is careful, precise, or calculating. In true crime discussions, this could hint at a suspect who plans meticulously. Right? This appears to be a pre-planned crime where people have alibis. If Ron Logan is involved, his time it was kept perfectly. Right? He had his alibi. He had to fabricate that. He was nowhere near his home. He was out doing something else, but still could have been involved. Same goes for Kagan Klein. He has his alibi. His phones show him actively in Peru while the murders are taking place. And according to him, his father was with him. Right? So there's their alibi. Rick, no phone in sight, no phone, no personal phone near the crime scene whatsoever. Later pops up in the day, pinging near his home, and he keeps time in order into specifics, right? He told Dan Doolin 1:30 to about 3:30. And then when everything was very specifically and methodically laid out. Father time. 2022 is when those posts took place, Peggy. February of 2022. Okay, what about this part? I'm pretty sure this is Chat GPT. Would you tell your dad if you found a mistaken photo of a juvenile? Question mark. Answer, no. So it's a rhetorical question. No, you wouldn't. But what does that mean? A mistaken photo of a juvenile. This reminds me of Kagan Klein. Okay. Let's see what they had to say about this. This is a bit more opaque, but it seems to reference withholding sensitive information about a minor. So does that mean possibly a minor assisted Rick? It could be a metaphor for secrecy, or it could be a cryptic way of saying people know something incriminating but are keeping quiet. Okay, what about he's Father Time? This is symbolic. Father Time is associated with clocks, precision, and inevitability. In the context of the previous comment about keeping time into specifics, it reinforces the idea of somebody methodical, perhaps with ritualistic, you see that? Ritualistic or scheduled behaviors. Father Time, you know, Saturn worship, Chronos, which is Satanism, Father Time. And why would time matter as it relates to the murder of Abby and Libby? Because it could have been ritualistic. It had to happen at a specific time. 213, 213-year-olds kidnapped exactly at 213, killed at about 2:30. What the hell is going on here? During Lupercalia. Right? If you're Father Time, you need to make sure that you commit this murder specifically at a very specific time. How are you going to do that? You're not going to be able to do that if you just walk out there and attack two girls. Oh, it's 213. I got to commit this murder. No, you're going to have to do a whole lot of pre-planning. You're going to have to lure somebody there at that exact moment. The bridge is probably some type of metaphor. Crossing the bridge. The fact that there's two victims must be important. And the fact that they need to be around the ages of 13. So in order to have something happen so precise, there's a lot of work that goes into it. And you might need somebody like a Richard Allen, somebody like Kagan Klein, who can get you two victims in an area at a specific time and place, at a specific on a specific date. A lot of work would have to go into that. If he gets locked up, we'll all start moving back in time. Could this be the reasons that Rick Allen isn't telling the whole story and why he's seemingly keeping quiet, but at the same time, not coming out about his innocence, not giving us his alibi, not speaking publicly about how he had nothing to do with this crime, but instead he's just keeping quiet, only really confessing when he was at his best point during his lockup. He found a friend in Dr. Monica Walla. She was helping him to kind of snap out of it, snap out of the psychosis. And once he did, and once he was comfortable and confident, he wanted to get rid of the burden and get on with his life and get on a fast track to forgiveness with God, because his heart might not hold up. Okay, this sounds metaphorical and possibly refers to regret, or the idea that exposing him would force the town to confront past events they'd rather forget. It's also in line with the cryptic Father Time motif, tying the idea of time and consequence together. All right, let's go ahead and let's add Richard into there. So ChatGPT says, when a user on 4chan repeatedly drops a name like Richard in a thread about the Delphi murders combined with the cryptic comments you shared, it usually serves one of a few purposes. All right, number one, implying suspect identity. They may be hinting that somebody named Richard is Father Time, the methodical killer they've been cryptically describing. Creating narrative intrigue. On 4chan, people often post a real or semi-real name to provoke reactions, even if there's no proof. The repetition of Richard reinforces the everyone knows him and we're keeping it secret. Symbolic inside joke. Sometimes a name is chosen for thematic reasons, not because it's real. Richard could be arbitrary, or it could allude to historical figures or cultural references tied to time or control. For example, Richard the Lionheart, a figure of authority. Okay, so it was at this point the word Lionheart. I mean, it just jumped out of the page at me. I said, where did I hear that in relation to this case? Where have I heard that before? So that brought me to Bobby Camworth. You remember this guy acting like he had something to do with the Delphi murders, that he possibly is the Delphi killer? Well, it reminded me of a title of one of his videos, The Lionhearted. I said, what the fuck? How could the Lionhearted be associated with Richard? And then I found this Richard the Lionheart, former King of England. So I found that very interesting. So, how does that tie in? Could be symbolic. Sometimes a name is chosen for thematic reasons, not because it's real. Richard could be arbitrary, or it could allude to historical figures or cultural references tied to time or control. Richard the Lionheart. Like, what the hell? It was instantaneous that I thought of this YouTube channel, Bobby Camworth, the Lionhearted. This came out in 2019, October. You know, right around the time of the new direction presser, and right around the time that somebody was sticking a gun in their mouth. Well, let's go check out some of Bobby's comments on that video. I don't want a pickle. These are all 6 years ago. I did it to myself. Now somebody's going to be sorry. Bobby Camworth reacting to somebody. He says, BG had help that day, an assistant, and they have since had a fallout and can't face each other. Now go away. That's just something that's just a strange comment for a troll to make. BG had help that day, an assistant, and they have since had a fallout and can't face each other. Now go away. Is that Rick and Tony? Says, let's picnic inside a morgue, not picnic basket, picnic casket. I think that's actually a lyric from a Dr. Dre Ice Cube song. Bobby says, I will be at my sign barn in about 2 weeks. Let you losers know when I will be signing autographs. But I don't think you can push me around. I have concealed carry, legal. Right? Similar to Rick. Here's a very interesting comment. We used to shoot pool together. Now, is this the young person? Maybe the same person who's commenting on 4chan? I don't know what, I don't know what this could be. Here's more comments from Bobby Camworth. Could be, I just want the reward, nothing else. I don't care about nothing else. Done it so many times. Now get off my channel before I brain you. Bobby Camworth, created April 14th, 2019, right around the time of the new direction presser. These are the first videos that he made on his channel. Liberty Seed, 16,000 views. They start out young. Barbie on the barbecue. And it looks like a black Barbie. Could that be reference to the Florifiers? And then a jacket that reminds me of Daniel Pearson. You remember the video he made where they're trying to catch Jack Daniels? Well, the young girl that's very reminiscent of Abby, who they film on the bridge, is wearing a jacket exactly like this. And I even believe those jeans might match too. So very interesting. This one's titled Down the Hole, Down the Hole, Down the Hole. This one's titled Hatchet Face. We all know what happened to Liberty. Right here it says, Give me liberty, which is associated with Thelema, Aleister Crowleyism, Satanism. So is Abby and Libby. And then you have the body of Liberty being kind of posed like the Statue of Liberty. And then some people believe that the actual Statue of Liberty is a statue of Lucifer. And I tend to subscribe to that idea. Bobby Cam, happy 4th. Dig Dolly. I dig Dolly literally. All right, let's go see some more of these disturbing videos. Right, here's the one. Bobby Camworth, the Lionhearted, who was also named Lionhearted. Richard. Chicks. Bobby in the Woods again. GIP. BC. And all these videos are really weird. Delphi flannel shirt guy exposed Bobby Camworth. Like, what the? Air Supply, you got Bobby Now, Bobby Camworth, the Moore, Sewell. I threw Judy Judge out like the piece of trash that she is. Judy Doll is a drag. Bobby Camworth, Judy Doll, and Baby Red Stroke. All very strange. Oh, here's some more. Silhouette of the person filming right there. Move over, Rover, and let Bobby take over. 8699, whatever that means. Bobby Camworth, cremation fail. Some evidence. And they have a BlackBerry. Some cigarettes. Bobby Miss, come with me. Showing a security jacket. Baby Dynamite. Stu Sutcliffe. Baby lost her head. Like just a bunch of crazy shit. But you guys get the point. So either way, I thought that was interesting. The Lionheart. Just a little rabbit hole that I kind of fell down. Okay, let's continue on here with part 2 of the live stream. So let's go to Dr. Kaur and Hammer and Nigel. I think we're going to start from the 3-minute mark. And I actually posted this video on my channel. You can go watch it yourselves if you want to. So Hammer and Nigel talking with pathologist Dr. Roland Kaur. And I think at the 3-minute marks, he starts talking about his opinions and what happened with the Delphi case. So it's better for us to hear it from him, right? And that's all I was saying earlier, Fishy. It's better not to spread misinformation and just present what the source actually is saying if you have it.
Here, For so many people, this was a case, this was a trial they were interested in, but they were
Can you
relying
guys
on
hear that?
outside sources to give them information because no cameras were in this courtroom. Remind everybody, if you can, what the wounds were on these young ladies.
Okay, let me make sure you guys can hear me first before we get going. So I'm going to wait on the chat. And if you heard the question from Hammer and Nigel, they're asking him, tell me about the wounds. Tell me about what happened. Tell me about your experience with this case, why you thought that, and why you said what you said during the trial. And he's going to tell us. We don't need to hear it from any strange YouTube channel, that bends the truth to fit some kind of weird narrative. We're literally going to hear from the man himself, Dr. the pathologist Roland Core, right? We're not going to hear some pro Richard Allen presentation. We're just going to hear what the man has to say. You can do with that what you will.
Well, we had what we call sharp force injury.
Because no cameras were in this courtroom. Remind everybody, if you can, what the wounds were on these young ladies.
Well, we had what we call sharp force injuries to the neck on both young ladies. Now, in forensics, you break down things by blunt force injuries, sharp force injuries, penetrating gunshot type injuries, things of that type. And in sharp force, there's also 3 subcategories. There are incised wounds, there are stab wounds, and there are what are called chop wounds, which are kind of with a heavier sharp bladed instrument like.
Okay, guys, pay very close attention to what he's saying right here. He's telling you his thought process.
Chop wounds, which are kind of incised wounds, there are stab wounds, and there are what are called chop wounds, which are kind of with a heavier sharp bladed instrument like a machete or something like that. And these were somewhat unusual in the fact that they were not really classic for either stab or incised, because they were fairly short, but in areas, sometimes they looked a little bit more, at least in the young lady that had multiple wounds. And, for the sake of, the family, I'm not going to go into great details in terms of, by names, but just we're going to be talking in generalities here.
Of course.
But one of the young ladies had a single sharp force injury to her neck, whereas the other had multiples. And again, these wounds didn't fit what I normally see in the multiple sharp force injuries I've seen over my career. Stab wounds tend to be deep, but not necessarily long, whereas incised wounds are more slashing sort of things that are not necessarily very deep. And these were kind of neither fish nor fowl in that regard. They were kind of a mixed bag.
I was wondering.
So now you can kind of understand what he was going through. He had a checklist that he had, and these wounds, he knew that it was a sharp object, but he couldn't mark the box. Right? He's like, well, this isn't a serrated blade, but it's serrated like. What the hell is this? Right? What could this be? It's not making any sense. It's not this, it's not that. It's, I've never seen anything like this before. What could it be? So when he hears the word box cutter, he's like, well, oh shit, that's it. Right? That's it. That makes total sense. So that's the epiphany moment. It's not that your doctor's just an idiot and he doesn't know. You can't put it together, right? Like, what could this possibly be? It's kind of like a shoe print. You don't know whose foot that is, right? Until somebody says, hey, well, look, this guy right here, he's your suspect. Well, he always wears Asics. He wears that style of Asics. Oh, well, oh shit, these are Asics, right? When you gather information about your investigation, things start to make sense. That's just common sense.
Wondering also, did the defense try to discredit you when you were on the stand, or was it more of a fact, more like?
No, I had to give a deposition in this case last February, long before the trial actually, started up in the fall. During the course of a deposition, you're testifying under oath, and at the time I was asked about, what I thought in terms of a weapon, and I really had to tell them at the time, well, it's serrated like, but I can't be more precise.
Yeah.
And this is where the defense team tried to exploit Dr. Core. Like, he told him straight out of the bat. Like, he didn't say box cutter, right? Because Richard Allen hadn't confessed. Once he officially confesses, that's evidence in a case, right? That's meaningful. Okay, what does that mean? Well, for him, it was a eureka moment. Like, oh my God, yeah, that's it. But he's still describing a box cutter when he's giving his deposition to Richard Allen's defense team. He's describing it. He says it's not a serrated blade, but it's serrated like. Like, I can't really explain to you what it is. So when new information comes out in a case, like, well, Rick said box cutter, and some of you might say, well, it's not new information, but that's new information to him. May not be new information to investigators, but it's definitely new information to him. And we'll talk about why Ron Logan or why Reese Davis was talking about a box cutter a little bit later. But yeah, that's important too.
And of course, they document that. Well, during the course of last summer, because you don't shut your mind off to thinking about this thing, because I know the case is coming up. It's going to be a big deal. I was out in my garage, happened to glance over at my workbench, and there on one of the pegboards, I saw a box knife hanging there that had a very almost identical pattern as what I described as those serrated-like marks on the side as a thumb grip. And I looked at that and said, son of a gun.
Okay, so this is what he's talking about. Let me show you my own investigation. This is something that I documented right around the time this information was being made public. Okay, and maybe this can help explain it. So the skin before reaching the carotid artery is 2 centimeters, right? 2 centimeters is almost an inch. So this distance right here is almost an inch. But the thing about the human body is it can be compressed as well, especially with pressure. So he's trying to figure out what could be a short blade, be somewhat serrated, but leaving handle marks on the outside of the skin, but leaving these shallow cuts. So here's the blade, right? The blade's going to, and these are the carotid arteries right here. Libby had both of hers cut on both sides. Abby on one side. But you can see that a regular box cutter would definitely reach. The one I used was the one issued, even the smaller one, the flat bladed one. Let me see if I can show you an example. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. So this is what I used for today's example. And these are just handed out at CVS. Something similar to that. So yeah, you definitely wouldn't take that into combat, would you? Like, you're not going to carry that around for self-defense. But if you're a madman, some kind of an assassin who's trying to conceal a weapon and target a specific area of the body, which would be the carotid artery, I mean, you're not going to get more lethal than that. This is a perfect tool for a precision type attack. Defense, no. Going into combat, no. But for a maniac killer, absolutely. A slasher, yeah, this thing's going to do a lot of damage. Okay, so this is all I did. And the reason I selected this pool noodle was because it's 2 centimeters deep to the hollow point. Exactly the depth of your skin before hitting your carotid artery, which I believe has a couple muscles, some fatty tissue, and then a protective layer over the artery itself for defense. But right at the upper neck where the girls were attacked is where it's the thinnest, 2 centimeters. That's exactly the depth of this pool noodle before hitting this hollowed out part. So if the pool noodle acts as the muscular, soft, fatty tissue, I figured, well, if I want to kind of get an idea of what markings it left, I'll run a piece of duct tape over the top and put a lot of pressure on that with the flat blade that is very commonly known, with CVS workers, and just put a ton of pressure on it and see if not only can I make it through that depth, but if it'll leave a serrated type marking afterward. So this is what was described by Dr. Cora in his testimony. Something similar to this. Cuts that were about 1 inch deep, and on the edge there was some serrated like patterns, but then this weird marking on the edges of the cut, which he said had to do with some kind of handle. So I want you to keep this in mind. This is something that was described during the testimony. This is something I've presented many, many times. Well, check out the test that I conducted. So as you can see, the blade made it through 2 centimeters. That's probably right at the inch mark. So the artery would have been cut right here. So it made it well through. And this is just one pressured cut. So 2 centimeters deep. Now look at the pattern here. Isn't that interesting? Let me put this one back up too. Okay, now do you see these weird markings right here? That's what we're seeing right here. So what you're seeing is this shallow blade cutting with ease, but not very deep. The depth of the blade is just not, it's just not doing as much damage as you would see a knife do. Now, a knife is way more deadly, right? If you're just going to stab somebody. But if you know that it's part of your plan to attack the arteries within the neck, you would only need a box cutter. So the testimony described 1 inch gashes, really, from somebody making slashing movements with their hand and then leaving these weird markings on the edge. Well, that's what we discovered in our test with that very flat blade. The exact same thing. So what is happening is the shallow blade is cutting through the top layer of skin, the muscle, and the artery with ease. But it's dragging across the skin just before it makes the cut, which is kind of like a tattoo artist pulling on your tattoo, right? You pull on it, make the tattoo, and then let it go, and it's crooked. So it's pulling the skin in one direction as it's being dragged across that top layer of skin. And it's causing what appears to be a serrated cut, but also leaving this weird dragging mark that's kind of checkered, or like check marks, which were described by Dr. Kaur.
That would explain exactly what we're dealing with, box knife. And that would fit the depth of the wounds we were dealing with. It would fit the contused edges of the wounds.
See, listen to this.
Listen
This is what Dr. Core is describing, something that appears somewhat serrated, but trying to explain what the hell these markings are on the edge. What is this? How could a shallow blade leave these strange handle markings? What is this? What weapon is this? Well, let's hear what he has to say.
The case is coming up. It's going to be a big deal. I was out in my garage, happened to glance over at my workbench, and there on one of the pegboards, I saw a box knife hanging there that had a very almost identical pattern as what I described as those serrated-like marks on the side as a thumb grip. And I looked at that and said, son of a gun, that would explain exactly what we're dealing with, box knife. And that would fit the depth of the wounds we were dealing with. It would fit the contused edges of the
Did you hear what he said? The depth of the wound and the contused edges.
wounds.
Yeah.
Everything would fit with the box knife. So I communicated that with the prosecution next time I met with them. A week or so after I testified, I was following the trial in the media, and I came across an article about one of the other witnesses who happened to be the warden at one of the state prisons where he was held for a time prior to trial. And the warden was one of the many people that are accused confessed to, in addition to confessing to family, confessing to other cellmates, and multiple other people, some of which were recorded.
Okay, so he's talking about the confession. Let's take a look at that confession. That way you can put this into context. Like, why does it even matter? Well, Rick confessed. So let's pull up the Dr. Walla confessions. Put it on the screen. Right to the source. Okay, so he said he wanted to confess. Well, before he made this confession, he was trying to make this same confession to his wife, but she wouldn't hear him. So if you want to know if Rick is crazy during this confession, all you have to do is listen to these phone calls. We're not going to play them all.
For English, press 1.
We'll listen
Para
to parts of
español,
them.
oprima 2.
Okay, so the reason these phone calls are important is because it kind of shows that Rick wasn't in psychosis, that he wasn't ill, that he wasn't being coerced, and that he wanted to confess. And that it was his wife, Kathy, who denied him that confession. So once she denies him, he confides in Dr. Walla. He says, hey, let me call her again. This time I want you to kind of hang out with me, and I want you to see what I'm dealing with. Like, she won't let me confess. So as my doctor, like, I'm really going to go crazy now. Like, I want you to see what I have to deal with. I can't find peace. This was my one chance for peace, and I'm not allowed it because she's the boss, right? Kathy's the boss. And I don't want to hurt her. If she wants to believe that I didn't do this, then I'm going to stop saying that I did it. But during this point where he's finally feeling well, he's probably not eating shit anymore. He's not sick. He's receiving great treatment from Walla. And she, believe it or not, supported Rick Allen. She thought he might be innocent, you know? So she was a big supporter. She would bring him literature about, you know, the life of a POW, because that's basically what it is in solitary confinement. And that's not just Rick, right? If you're going to argue this, you have to argue it across the board. There needs to be a third choice for the way people are treated in prison, especially if they're not convicted and awaiting trial. So these phone calls just kind of prove that he wasn't out of his mind. So we'll play parts of both of them, and then I'll read Dr. Walla's testimony about his confession.
Voice. It's good to hear your voice, baby.
Oh, you doing okay, hon?
Oh, I might be now.
Okay. Well, I'm supposed to be meeting Brad here at a gas station to sign something.
So did you hear what he said there? Did you hear that? I might be now. Right? I might be okay now. I think I'm good now. Like, I've come to terms with things.
Are they going to move you? No. So they allowed you to call, or have you been able to and just couldn't?
Oh, great. This is the part where it gets weird.
Yeah. I'm right here.
Oh. Are you okay?
Yeah. Yeah. What's going on, hon?
I don't know. I just think maybe I've lost my mind.
Oh.
She says,
Oh,
"Oh,
honey. We've all lost our minds at this point.
So Brad and so I can trust Brad and Andy then?
Yes, you can, sweetheart. Yes.
yeah, right."
Let's not talk about
know?
anything that we don't need to, but
What about Andy's
No,
brother who
there
recovered
are
the
lawyers,
footage
honey.
from the marathon gas station? What about him?
there are lawyers.
Can he be trusted?
Well, I need to tell you something anyway.
Okay. Are you sure you want to talk to me over the phone?
I think I have to.
He's like, "Yeah, I'm ready."
Okay.
I need you to know that I did this.
What? No. No, you didn't, dear. There's no way. There's
I
no
hope
way,
you still
dear.
love me.
Dear, there's no way. Okay.
I hope you still love me.
I always will go love you, honey, but no, you have not done anything. And I think you are not well.
What's up, Anthony?
So you,
See, she's writing the script that was provided to her from the attorneys. They said this is going to happen. They're going to torment him. And if he confesses, like, it's because they're poisoning him. So what she's doing is feeding him the narrative that the defense team has come up with. Like, hey, we're going to go this route. He's a POW. He's being mistreated. And there's other people that did it. So she's kind of spitting that at him. She's regurgitating it. Here's the second call. So he calls back. She hangs up on him. Like, I can't believe you just did that, incriminated yourself. I got to call the attorneys. And then he calls her back and has Dr. Walla stand with him. He says, Dr. Walla, like, I can't, she won't let me confess. I need you to kind of come stand with me. And this is the call that he makes with Dr. Walla standing next to him. He's trying to make her understand what he's dealing with, that the one person that matters the most to him won't listen to him. And that's why he's going crazy. It's important for his doctor to see, right? If he's finally doing better, he's getting the right medication, he finally trusts Dr. Walla. He has a friend. He has somebody that he can confide in, and he's ready to do this. But now he can't. So, doctor, what do I do now? Like, I'm really going to lose my mind. Call
For
number 2.
English, press 1. Para español, oprima 2. For a collect call, press 0. For a debit call, press 1.
Exactly, Chiefs.
To learn how to use this phone and know more about Global Department of Corrections, Westville Correctional Facility.
Okay. Love me, baby.
yeah.
And everybody else will as well. Honey?
Yes.
So he sounds fine. That's the point.
Because I may have to spend the rest of my life here, or
Stop talking about it. That's not true. Okay.
Imagine if she just said, why? Why did you do it? How could you have done that to those poor girls? He would have said everything. It would have all came out right then and there. And it would have been thanks to Dr. Walla. This confession is thanks to Dr. Walla. because she did her job. She brought him out of that psychotic state, made sure he was lucid, and then he's good to go. He's like, I need to confess to this. I'm ready. Like I got through that first initial, rough patch, just like most people do. Now, this is why they take people and put them into like safekeeping. Because they usually do that in jail because that's when people try to hurt themselves the most. Forget being attacked by other inmates. They are the greatest threat to themselves. So that's what they were trying to do by putting him in safekeeping at Westville. Is that a good place to be? Absolutely not. But there is no alternative. Nobody's fighting for that. Nobody's trying to get legislation passed. Nobody's fighting for a third option for the non-convicted prisoner or even those who have been convicted. They're being treated by other inmates in some cases. That's not right. That's not fair. It's inhumane. Is it their fault? Yes. Can we do better? Absolutely. But the thing is, people that fight for people like Richard Allen don't care about anybody else. They're only fighting for Richard Allen to prove their narrative correct. They don't care about anything else. Because if they cared about people that are being mistreated and basically tortured in prison, it would be across the board. Because they're doing it now. There's thousands of inmates right now being tortured in prison, needing medical attention, being ignored. They're literally dying while covered in their own urine and feces, starving. Nobody's fighting for them. Nobody's talking about them and the fact that they're being tortured. It's only Richard Allen. He was tortured. He's being abused. But the only thing about that is he's being dragged through the same system and institution that thousands of men and women are dragged through every day. The same thing is happening to them that happened to Richard Allen. But for him, he's a POW. He's being tortured. That's why he confessed. Fuck all of these other inmates, right? It's just Richard who's being mistreated and singled out because they don't care about the humanity of it. They just care about pushing forward a narrative. Later, Red, good to see you.
Okay.
I don't understand.
So Dr. Wall is right there next to him.
I just got to know that everybody's still going to love me. Because I may only be able to see you one last time. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, thank you. It's not true.
It's true, honey.
No, it's not.
That part right there, let's play that back. Listen to the tone of his voice when he says, "It's true, honey."
It's true, honey.
No, it's not.
It's like he's done running. I'm tired of running.
It's true, honey.
No, it's not. You're not well.
I'm well.
I'm well.
No.
He says, "I'm well."
No, you're not.
Yes, I am, honey.
She says, "No, you're not." "Yes, I am." How are you going to argue with that? You're not well. I am well. No, you're not. Yes, I am. Right? It's obvious that he's well. Those two phone calls prove it. Let's go to Dr. Wallace's testimony. So he said he wanted to confess to his crimes and went on to tell his story. He reported seeing his parents the morning of the crime, right? Father Time. Taking care of his alibi along with Kagan Klein. Now, how do you get two girls who are 13 years old on 213 at 213 on a bridge so that you can kidnap them precisely at that time? It takes a lot of pre-planning. and on a date, specific time, and location. That's why he was in Peru that morning. The same reason that Kagan Klein was logging in and out of the Anthony Shots account on 2 burner phones. One went to Richard Allen. Remember, they were stalking these girls on Snapchat. Abby and Libby wanted to go not only to the trails, but Abby wasn't comfortable crossing the bridge. That may have even been her first time. Why is she so motivated while these creeps are stalking them on Snapchat? Why is she so motivated? And why is Libby saying this is where we go? The investigative team says yes. They went there because of Anthony Shots. Does that make Anthony Shots the killer? No. Do they believe? They believe he's involved. Don't just take my word for it. All of the investigators believe that Kagan Klein is involved. And I don't know why they would cover up for Richard Allen and Kagan Klein. That means that there's somebody else involved as well, who they do respect, who might hold secrets on them. That's the only explanation. Else they would have fed Kagan Klein or Richard Allen to the wolves long ago. If it didn't lead to somebody bigger and higher up in the community. He stated he was supposed to go eat with them, but opted to get himself a 6-pack. He reported drinking 3 beers and then finishing the rest later. He stated, I bundled up once on the trail. See, and if he's worried that the other people involved are going to kill his family or harm his daughter or his wife, he's just going to tell his part. But I do believe it's possible he was drinking beer in the cemetery. I think that's what they were doing. I think they were drinking beer and doing some other shit out there by the cemetery. Right? The place that Kagan Klein confessed to being. He stated, I bundled up. Once on the trail, he stated, I laid in wait. He reported seeing the girls and following them to the bridge. He mentioned doing something with his gun and stated, I think that's where the bullet fell out. And then he said, I ordered them down the hill. He stated his intention was to sexually assault the girls and mentioned that he thought that they were older than their biological ages. He said, I saw a van. Okay, now this part, I don't believe. He says, I thought they were older. This is something psychopaths do to make themselves seem better than what they really are. They won't allow themselves to be viewed in a negative light. So he's going to tell a half-truth here. I think he knew damn well their ages. But he doesn't want Dr. Walla to think of him as a pedophile. He said he saw a van, right? She's his new friend, which scared him and caused him not to follow through on the essay of the girls. He said they crossed a creek and then he cut their necks. He indicated wanting to make sure that they were dead. He reported covering their bodies with 3 branches. He said he exited the area with tree branches, and said he exited the area by keeping off the trail as not to be seen. Crossed the street, went behind the Mears property, almost as if he knew about the Hoosier Hardware Store camera. He returned to his vehicle, which he parked by a nearby building. He stated he managed to continue living his life time after time passed by and he hadn't been caught. So he goes on to talk about how he used a box cutter and he got rid of it at the CVS. So once he made that statement, it is now evidence in the crime. So Dr. Courer, using that new information, says, yes, I'm not saying it was a box cutter, but yeah, that makes sense. It's consistent. So his expert testimony about the fact that it lines up doesn't help to do anything other than to confirm what Richard Allen is confessing. But his confession lines up with the evidence. Right? 1-inch deep laceration and these weird like abrasions on the side, which we now know what they are. So the carotid artery right here, 2 centimeters of muscle and tissue to reach the carotid artery. Libby was cut on both sides. I think that was because of a chase, or the fact that she ran or probably fought somewhat. Maybe he was able to push Richard back somewhat. And him not wanting to use his firearm, which definitely would have got him busted, right? He only wanted to use it to control the girls. Like, I'm going to scare them with the gun. You can't scare anybody with the little box cutter, even because most people don't realize how effective it is, right? For an assassin, it's a deadly tool, and it could be used effectively to assassinate 2 young girls, especially if you knew all along that you were going to use a blade because they wouldn't see it coming. You could hide it in your hand, right? Hey, trust me, I'm a good guy. Here, just let me do something real quick. And then boom, that's it. It's over. You only need 2 centimeters, less than an inch of penetration to reach this very, very important artery. Less than 2 minutes to bleed out once that's severed. Most definitely a death sentence. And this person specifically targeted this area. So why would he specifically target this area on both victims if he planned to use the gun? Right? That's his mistake. That's his Brian Koberger moment of leaving the knife sheath. It's the variable that wasn't considered. I didn't use my gun, so therefore I didn't leave any ballistic evidence. And when he's trying to do like a countermeasure, now that he's confessed and his wife Kathy won't accept it, he has to start making up false confessions, right? Oh, I shot the girls. I shot them in their back, right? What better false confession to make than to understand that a gun was involved, but then to play dumb about the fact that you don't know any of the details, right? Oh, I don't know the details. So yes, I killed them. I shot them with my gun. You said my gun was involved. So yes, it must mean that I used it to commit the murder. Well, that's not intimate details that only the killer would know. No, but if you are the killer and you know exactly how they died, and you're trying to make a false confession to counteract your actual confession to make it seem like you're just saying crazy shit randomly, that's definitely something you would say, right? It's the opposite of what happened. It's the opposite of his actual confession. So he's counteracting his actual confession with some bullshit. You know, something a child would do to get out of getting in trouble. And remember, Kagan Klein made a song with this girl with her hands in front of her chest covered in mud, right? What sounds like mud? Blood. And the title of the song was Artery. And then the second song that he posted was titled Rose. And I think it was posted December 27th, Libby's birthday, and her middle name is Rose. So the 2 songs he has a picture that looks very similar to Abby, hands up to her chest, covered in mud. She appears almost similar. Her looks are similar to Abby. Titled it Artery. Posted that on Facebook. New song coming out. Shortly after, a very similar post has an image of a rose, and it has the date on there, 12/27. And the song title Rose, that's Liberty's birthday and her middle name. And then the other one matched with Abby. How creepy is that? So it's not going to take much, guys. Yes, you're not going to take a box cutter into a Royal Rumble, right? You're not going to go to war with a box cutter attached to the end of your rifle. You know, that's going to be a bayonet. You're not going to keep a box cutter in a holster on your side as you're walking through a dangerous neighborhood. It's just not going to happen that way. But if you're some psycho slasher, the box cutter is perfect. It's going to inflict a lot of damage, deep cuts, easy to conceal. So, I mean, it's a perfect weapon. Not only is it a perfect weapon for attacking the neck area, this proves that if you had a gun, you definitely would have used it. But this seems more pre-planned, right? That the neck must have been cut for a reason. I think it's possible they collected blood. I'm not sure. I do believe other people were involved. I think blood could have been collected. Doesn't mean that they were strung up on a tree and hung down and then they all were in robes and, chanting. I mean, all it would take would be to produce a container and hold it up to the wound and then close it and take it with you. But there was a very specific reason for that blade. That's not something that Rick just thought of, in my opinion, because he could have used the gun, right? Used the gun and still escaped out of there. People would have been like, what was that? Did you hear that? I heard 2 gunshots. Oh, people shoot down there all the time. Don't even worry about it. But instead, he was like, nope, I'm not using this gun. I'm going to use this little blade basically in the only place that I can. So it seems very planned out, very methodical to use this blade precisely in the area where it would be the most effective and the most deadly and almost the perfect choice of weapon. But yeah, does it sound stupid? Hey, I'm going to go commit a murder with this little box cutter. Well, if you were planning on cutting them right in the neck on the carotid artery, be very specific, right? Precise. This is the depth here. And this would be the tissue that the blade would have to travel through. A little bit of muscle, fatty tissue, and then like a protective shell around the artery itself that a blade could definitely go right through. So box cutter, although not the preferred weapon of war, for a psycho slasher, assassin, yep, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, guys. I don't know if I have any more for you. Let me check. So I was going to talk a little bit about the Colleen Ritzer case. So remember, Colleen Ritzer was killed by a student who was very similar to Richard Allen. Sexual assault, very angry, dealing with mental health issues, kidnapped his teacher, brought her and sexually assaulted her in the bathroom and killed her with a box cutter and strangled her. And then he went and dumped her out in the local wooded area and covered her with sticks and leaves. So we were going to touch on that case, which is extremely disturbing and sad. She seemed like a very great woman. Let's see. I was going to show you guys a video. Maybe we can show this. This was titled "The Deadly Truth About Box Cutters and Utility Knives." Yeah, let's watch this. This was by We All Juggle Knives. Might be like a minute long. I'm not sure. Let's see.
Sealable and invisible, that's more of a help to someone that's trying to go assassinate someone, you know what I'm saying? And as far as the use of the...
All right, Cheeks. Thanks for being a member. Thanks for flexing on them, showing them biceps. Have a great day at work. We'll catch you in the replay section. We're going to get out of here in a few minutes anyway.
These as weapons, you know, these are slashing weapons. They're draw cutting, close cutting, as well as slashing weapons. So they're going to be used at a longer range in a strike like so, or they are used at extremely close range like so. So
and I think that's what happened. What he's describing
close range like so
was that close range.
They're used as slashers or as close cutters. That is how they are used. They are not used for stabbing, obviously, because they're not long enough to do much, although you could, but...
See, it's almost as if the killer, or, you know, Richard Allen, or this group of people, or Richard Allen himself, planned from, I don't know if from that morning, days, months, years ahead of time, but he planned to kill those girls with that blade. Or he knew that he was going to use a box cutter specifically to cut that artery. He did it on both victims, and he used that weapon precisely. No defensive wounds, no nothing. He got up close, held them down, and directly, almost like a surgeon, aimed for the artery.
It's just, I've never heard of them used that way, and it's just not that effective. But, you know, slashing is not nearly as deadly as stabbing with a longer blade. However, it is freaking terrifying, because just a few slashes is going to produce so much blood and pain. As a slashing weapon, it's a terrifying weapon to be confronted with if you're just like a normal, everyday person.
Yeah, there's no good outcome, right? So that was a video that I planned to play, but we ran out of time. But yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. We heard from pathologist Roland Coeur. He said, I never said it was a serrated blade. I said it was serrated like. So once they have new evidence, which was a confession, an actual confession from Richard Allen, but I think he was only telling his part, minimized, leaving out anybody that was working with him to protect his family, and also to protect his reputation with his new friend, Dr. Walla. He left certain facts out. But Dr. Roland Coeur explains to us, like, hey, I'm not looking for serrated. It's serrated-esque, but it's a very shallow blade. So with new information about Richard Allen using a box cutter and getting rid of it in the dumpster behind CVS, it was a eureka moment. It was an epiphany. It was like, okay, that makes sense. Perfect. And our own tests that we conducted, I mean, show the same thing. Look. It's like, why is it showing a serrated pattern? It's just a straight blade. But it's so shallow that in order to make a deep enough cut, you have to press it into the skin. Well, while you're pressing it into the skin and dragging, it's compressing the skin together like a spring, and then making a cut. Once it releases it, it leaves it kind of jagged like this. But at the same time, you're getting these marks on the outside of the wound. And Dr. Coeur couldn't figure it out. He's like, what is leaving this? What is leaving what appears to be somewhat serrated, but it's not serrated, because if it was, it would have a pattern, a consistent pattern on both sides, which is consistent with the serrated wound. What is this? And why is it leaving this weird handle abrasion on the edges? Well, here comes Richard Allen to confess, I used a box cutter. Well, damn, there it is. That makes perfect sense. Let's see. What else did I have in here? Let's see. Course testimony. Oh, we had the Reese Davis stuff. Okay, let's try to touch on that real quick. Because this stuff, I think this is important. Okay, so basically, this one was dated, what is that, June 21st, 2017. So way before the Richard Allen discussion about a box cutter, information that I don't think Dr. Coeur would have had, but for whatever reason, this was never talked about. This was never mentioned in police reports or run by a pathologist at this time, which I don't understand. But right here, Reese Davis says he talked to Ron Logan, and Ron Logan said he committed the murders, that he had already kidnapped the girls. Basically, he's the bridge guy, kidnapped the girls and panicked and said, well, because I'm on probation and I've already technically, legally, kidnapped you. Now I have to kill you. So he attacked the older one and then killed the other girl and then just left them out there, which is very strange. Here's the state's response, or the letter that was given from Reese from the state. In this letter, he says the same thing but includes Kagan Klein. So now he says that Kagan Klein and Ron Logan are working together. And isn't that interesting? All of the people that were acting suspicious around this time are somehow being connected with this box cutter. You got Kagan Klein and Ron Logan. Ron Logan, who appears to be cleaning up his property. What do you do before you have guests or company over? You tidy up. You know, you do the dishes that might be in the dishwasher. You know, you might pick up a few items that might be strung across the sofa. Maybe there's a dish or two out. You know, you just tidy up a little bit. Maybe you vacuum, sweep up. Well, that's what it appeared Ron Logan was doing that day. We have video of him taking items to the dump as if he was cleaning up his property. So is he expecting company? Well, for some reason, he leaves right at the moment there's a kidnapping happening to establish his alibi, but he also now has money to burn. Like, why all of a sudden do you have money to burn, and it appears that you have foreknowledge of a crime and also intimate details from the crime scene itself? Being the box cutter, you tried to come up with an alibi. You're on the property that the girls were found on. It appeared that they tried to set you up for the murders at one point. Your attorney is the same attorney as Kagan Klein, who is in the same firm as Richard Allen's attorney. That same attorney's brother was responsible for collecting the Marathon gas station footage and apparently damaged it, according to the FBI. It is all connected to almost appearing to quarantine what information Richard Allen will release to the public and about who else might have helped. They just need to shut him up, right? Father Time. And they're all going to go back in time if he gets arrested. Well, not if they can quarantine him, shut him up, and keep him in fear that his family will be hurt. But it's all very strange. It's all very elaborate. A lot of tentacles. But I'll see you guys again real soon. Thanks for tuning in. Go check me out later. Actually, in about an hour, probably an hour and a half, I'm going to be a little bit late. I got to pick the kids up from school, but I'll be on Let's Be Frank. He's doing a show on the floor of 4. It's the anniversary of their murder. That's what he's celebrating. And I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there to celebrate the memory of the floor of 4 girls. And I'll be there as soon as I can. So hopefully you guys will go check us out. But later on, probably about an hour and a half, I'll be over there. And we'll be talking about the Flora Fires case. So I'll see you guys there. Peace.